are here, a special edition of Table Talk. What I am going to call side table talk. We're going to have these every 4 to 6 weeks. The guests are going to be different, but this is the chance for us to kind of the feeling that I thought about when I thought about these special episodes is dinner's over and you want to have a really deep conversation with somebody where the conversation just carries meaning. It dives into each other's stories. And it's kind of like dinner's over, you're sitting down at the chairs, maybe you poured a second cup of coffee and you're going to sip over that. And just to have honest, open, some conversations. And the goal of this episode, all of us, and when I say us, I'm referring to myself and everybody watching this video. You are in a special new role that you've transitioned into as lead pastor of GCC. And so it's kind of our honor and privilege to get to know Sheldon. I was going to say behind the pulpit, but you don't use a pulpit.
I don't, right. There's a reason for that. We'll get to that.
Right. The Sheldon behind the goatee. No, just to kind of give everybody the sense of, hey, we're sitting down, we're going to kind of get to know you, and as if you were out having a coffee with someone, which I don't know if since you've been here, you've had a coffee with all, 2,200 people that are at this church. And I mean, a lot of those people, they'll have their fair chances. But this is just kind of like a sit down, get to know you. So yeah, side table talk. This is the first special edition. So,
I like it.
Now, let's just address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
You are from South Africa. You were born there?
Was that a pun on elephant in the room stuff? Okay, yeah. I was born in South Africa in the 1900s.
Oh, yes.
But
early
mid to
take us back several decades ago.
Yeah.
To where you're from and what childhood was like.
So I grew up in Cape Town, which is the most southern city in Africa. Now South Africa is its own country at the bottom. And a lot of people, when they hear that you're from Africa, they think immediately you must have had a pet elephant, which I didn't, or that you lived in a straw hut or something.
Do you also know everybody that
I
lives
do.
in Africa?
I know everybody in South Africa. People say, "Do you know?" Yeah, it's like 50 million people. I'm sure that we've crossed paths. Actually, South Africa is pretty big, and you can get on Wikipedia and read the history and stuff like that as well. But a lot of people always think that, well, your parents must have been missionaries. Mom and Dad were always involved in church. That was definitely a big part of it. But actually, both my parents were born there. Cape Town's a city of about 4 to 5 million people, so it's a huge city. Beautiful city, mountains on one side, Table Mountain. If you look up, very iconic image. You have the ocean, you have vineyards, you have farms, you have so many different things.
If you're watching the podcast, you can pause.
Yeah,
and
you can
go
pause.
Google that.
Go and Google it. Actually, one of the most beautiful, I think every year when they would have most beautiful cities in the world, Cape Town would win like 2/3 of the time. It's just an incredibly beautiful city and a very diverse city. So you have people from all kinds of spaces and places. When you go back, my family heritage on my dad's side goes back to like the 1680s. So when the Dutch East India Company, little history, was building a kind of a way station, a refreshment station. As people were taking ships, they weren't going on the the caravan routes to India, China, to the east to buy spices and all these kinds of things. Then they started putting things on ships, and that was one of the places that they had sent people ahead in the 1650s. I mean, the discovery of Africa goes back to the 1400s and further back and whatever else. And there were some indigenous people, the Bushmen, the Bush people that were there. But then in Cape Town, where I'm from, it was never meant to be a colonizing. They were just meant to kind of trade with people, and it wasn't a slave nation or anything. And then when ships kind of moved past, so 1680s, I actually have there's a couple gravestones in some places in South Africa, and one of my early ancestors also has the same last name as me. First name was Peter DeVries, and he was a pastor of a church, and his gravestone is in the old days, like you see it here, there's a church and then there's the cemetery next to it. It's there, and my dad's been there, and we've seen some of those places. My mom's side, so my dad's side came out of the Dutch side. That's my last name is more Dutch, and then my mom's side was more the English and French, and so the Huguenots and others that went there, and that's why South Africa is a big wine place. So the late 1600s, they were there. So I've had grandparents that were born there. So it's a long history, same as people experience here. So, and as you move further north in Africa, yes, things become more remote and more rural and poorer countries. But South Africa is very, we have cars and houses
No
and running
way.
water and
What
electricity
side of the
and
road do you
all
drive on?
we drive on we drive on the correct side of the road. Yeah, so we drive we drive on the left side with right-hand drive vehicles. So it's the same as UK, England, and some of the other countries in the world. So it's really fun, which is
Sometimes
awesome.
you still do that here.
Yeah, sometimes I mean all the time, most of the time. If I'm in my truck, I just don't care. I just go where I want to go. That's
You
what's
get pulled over.
happening.
Sorry, I
Sorry,
am from
my
South
bad.
Africa.
Yeah, I just act like I don't speak
Yeah.
English. It still works. But no, and then so mom and dad, I have two sisters, one older, one younger, and my older sister lived in the U.S. for almost 20 years, got married, had kids, and then about 15 years ago, they immigrated back to South Africa, and they live pretty close to my parents. My younger sister was also married, tragically lost her husband in a car accident about a decade ago, and but she lived in London for some time. So all the kids, we kind of moved, and the sisters sort of moved back, and so we get to visit every now and then, and our kids have gone there. Our kids actually, so I'm actually a dual citizen. I have South African citizenship, and then I
Could you show us
became.
proof?
I can, yes, I sure can. And then actually, my kids are both dual citizens too, because country of heritage and stuff like that. So we have some. Haley's not. We just keep her,
She could still be president.
on the edge. She could still be president. Yeah, I can never be president, thank goodness. So that's
So
good.
this is an offshoot of Table Talk,
Yeah.
and obviously we don't have tables that are big enough to throw a meal on. They're just for our coffees right now. But that's kind of the purpose of this little offshoot. Is almost like symbolically, metaphorically, we're removing even the barrier of like a full meal, because it's even less about the meal. It's more about the story, and kind of getting to know you. But speaking of tables, when you were growing up, give us a little fly on a wall perspective of what would the conversation be like when you were a kid at home at the dinner table? What would that look like?
Yeah, mom grew up in a home where dad left for work at 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, got home at about 6:30 at night. Mom was a homemaker, so she worked before we were born, but then after we were born, so a pretty traditional home. Mom would cook dinner and take care of the household. Dad would work. I didn't really see my dad a lot when I was very young, because you go to bed at 8:30. So when we would get home, we would always have dinner as a family at like 6:30. We would sit around the table, we would pray, we would have dinner as a family. And then early years, you were already in your pajamas, off to bed. And then as we got a little older, I think it was very normal. Just what we would talk about, it would be this and that, and kind of what we do with our kids when we actually are in the same house at the same table at the same time. But then special events, like we had some big traditions at Christmas. Like we would always have Christmas Eve dinner together, and me and mom would cook traditional lamb, and we would do other things. And those are the ones that if you ask me about sitting around the table, or we would sit. A lot of people in South Africa live kind of indoor outdoor because of the season. So a lot of times we would have dinner outside or on the weekends and cook out and stuff like that. Those are the things
You
that I
guys are having
remember
lamb.
the most. Yeah, lamb is a very sort of traditional thing to eat in
Still
South
doing that for
Africa.
Christmas
I
here?
still do that here.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
hmm
Get on the lamb train, everybody.
Yeah, cook it on the smoker. It's amazing. So if I had my phone, I would show you pictures. I'm very proud of the lamb.
We'll have some in one of the podcast
Yeah,
episodes.
yeah. It's like just yeah, we'll kill it on one episode and then cook it for the next episode. Kind of just bring it full circle.
All right, take a sip of coffee. I
Okay.
gotta. Well, you are drinking coffee. I was gonna shoot you with some hot seat questions like coffee or tea.
Yeah. No. Probably,
Mine is tea.
I like tea. Tea is pretty traditional in South Africa.
Okay.
So most people drink tea.
A lot
So
of sugar in there. So
yeah.
a lot of sugar in South Africa in their beverages.
Yeah, like I never grew up. I don't think I drank a glass of water until I was, 30. If I'm being honest, I'm like, what are you drinking? Like, I'm just drinking a glass of water. Why are you drinking a glass? Did you not have anything else to drink? I mean, I don't know what's happening.
Coke or Pepsi?
I'm a Coke guy, probably Diet Coke,
Diet Coke.
Coke Zero.
Yeah, Coke. Okay.
Yeah. Although I don't, in Texas where we lived for 20 years before we came here, um, it was mostly Coke products, and it's not called pop. It's I think mostly like soda.
Yeah.
Now there's some places they go, hey, what you want a Coke? And you're like, no, I'd like a Diet Coke. Okay.
Yeah, and
Like
when
I
I
want
was
a
in
Coke. I
school in
want
Tennessee, that's what it was.
yeah.
I would say, oh, I want a Coke. What flavor of Coke?
What
And
Coke
I'm
do you
like,
want? I
what?
want a Fanta. Okay, I'll get you
Yeah.
that. That's not a Coke. It's just not quite sure what's happening.
Yeah.
But when I first moved to the U.S., I lived in Michigan, and they called it pop. So I kind of got used to that. And then somebody told me, and they said, oh, it's called pop because that's the sound it makes when you. I'm like, that's not the sound it makes. That's like saying a dog says rough, rough. That's not what a dog does.
No, it does not.
No, it does not
Doesn't say
that.
bark, bark either.
Right. It doesn't say bark, bark. So anyway, yeah.
Speaking of Michigan and Texas,
Mhm.
let's do the old jump over the pond and
Yeah.
what that process was like for you. So, um, when you were growing up, did you come to the States at all before you ended up kind of planted here?
Yeah.
Was that family that brought you here, or was it like education? Because I know you went to school.
Yeah, we had some family. We had some family that lived in Michigan. I had an uncle that lived in Michigan, and he was also in ministry as well. I had come to the U.S. a couple of times in my life, but it wasn't like, one day we'll all move to America. That wasn't the concept. But my older sister was recruited. She was an incredible track athlete, and so she was actually recruited out of high school, and she ran at a school in Texas. And so we had some maybe more exposure to that. We would often have people that came and we would do, conferences, or have people that we had American people that were missionaries that would sometimes come to our church, and they were going more into the little bit north of Africa, like Zimbabwe and Zambia and places like that, doing mission work. So we still had interaction with them. And the church that I was a part of, which was Restoration Movement, was started by groups of Americans back in the 40s and 50s, going and starting. So South Africa was very much a Reformed church, mostly the Dutch Reformed Church, obviously because of the heritage. But then you had these other movements, so like Anglican, like obviously also Church of England, which was more just Anglican because we were influenced by England and all these other places. And so some of these restoration places came and started churches, and that was the outgrowth of the church that I was a part of, a church that my parents helped start and whatever. So there was some interaction. If ever a church over in the U.S. would get new, like in the old days of songbooks, then we would often get the old ones.
The old ones, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was.
You couldn't wait for all the churches
Yeah,
to
we couldn't
upgrade.
wait for all the church. Like I remember growing up, and they would set up a projector, and we would watch like movie reels on like Sunday nights. Like I still remember that. And when I talk to people, they remember doing that like 60 years ago. I remember doing that like 30 years ago. So it's kind of it's kind of cool. I think we've caught up a
Probably
bit
not as
now.
bad as some of the African countries that are like,
Yeah.
the kids will receive the Super Bowl championship shirt
Yes,
from the team
right,
that
the team that lost.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness,
So yeah, it's kind of
not getting
funny.
hand-me-downs quite like that.
Yeah, so we weren't quite in that realm
Yeah.
there as well, but I had some interaction with the U.S. and when I didn't actually want to go into ministry at first. My dad was an accountant, and that was, I thought, oh, business, entrepreneurial, that's kind of my spirit. And the call of ministry, there was a year that I was actually going to I was going to university. I was going to university and college at the same time. I was in a Bible college, and I had like 36 hours one semester, and it just was unsustainable. And this just became very clear that this was the call. And so
How old were you at that point?
I was I was probably about 20
Okay.
when that happened, and I also there was some of the schooling there is more geared towards if you want to be going to the priesthood, or if you want to do more reformed. There was a school that I was a part of that was Restoration Movement, but it was I also wanted to. I sort of believed that I needed to find my own way in that, and I wanted to be well educated in the field that I was in. And there was a program up at Rochester University in Michigan, and I got accepted into it, I think mostly because they wanted some international students, uh, and got to go there. And then I had some really good professors that said, hey, you need to go do graduate work at either Pepperdine or at Abilene Christian, which is where I chose to go. My sister lived in Dallas at the time, which was a couple hours apart, which was good. And actually, I felt it was the better school. And then my intention was always to go back to South Africa. But it kind of didn't, ended up staying here and working here. And people think, oh, you move here, and I had to come in on student visas. It's very hard to come over on a student visa. Then when you move, you can go on a student visa. You're not allowed to work in the open market. You can work on campus. So I worked in the cafeteria, and I worked maintenance, getting up, shoveling snow in Michigan that I'd never grown up seeing in my whole life.
Oh, no snow in Cape Town.
No, only on the mountains. I mean, we've never grew up seeing snow.
All right, sounds like we need to start, campus number 4,
Absolutely, yes.
GCC Cape Town.
I will be remote to all of our campuses here by, I know it'll look like I'm on the beach,
Yeah,
but I'm not
right.
really on the beach. Yeah, so no, it was good, and ended up just kind of staying, met my wife, and it was good. It was a good fit, and the call of ministry. I've always been. I think guys. I went to boarding school when I was 12, and so I've had a bit more. Like I think men are different than women. Women want to live closer to family, and whatnot. Not that we hate our families, but I think we are a bit more adventurous, and I want to make sure that I'm doing what I love to do and what God's called me to do, not just I want to do it here. And that's never really been a conflict for me. Mom and Dad still get to travel, get to see my family more often than you would think, and it's been a good. It fits me. It's a good journey, and now we live in Northeast Ohio, a place that we didn't even. Where's Youngstown, and that's what I love also about Haley. She's got that adventurous spirit, and we're not afraid to go where we need to go.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
So, I know a lot of us in ministry will hold different weights with the term, like you're calling into ministry, and some people view it as one thing, some people view it as another. What I'm curious about is when at some point you were fully committed to the education, but also to that purpose, to that assignment of going into ministry. Were there certain moments or certain people in your life that confirmed that, and what did that kind of process look like?
Yeah, I think mom and dad were always very supportive of that move, even though I think that that's a hard life. I think it's shifting. I think you go back 100 years. Nobody was saying, "Oh, you want to be a pastor? That's amazing. One good job. You're going to be rich and famous," kind of thing.
Most people react with, "Are you sure?"
Yeah. Are you sure? Can you do anything else? I mean, do you have any other skills whatsoever? Um, and and part of it, I think, is I think it's kind of a coming together of how God has made us, as well as I don't know what we're willing to give up in life, what where the lines are for us. It was something that the choice of ministry was. I don't know if it was hard for me to get there. I think it just sort of I definitely had to make a choice. It wasn't just like, oh, since I was 2 years old, I knew that's what I'm going to do. Um, there was a bit of fight in the midst of that, where it was sort of a path of discovery, as well as what is the necessity, or what is the need, or what is the call in the midst of this. And then you also learn, like, it's kind of funny because I had a horrible lisp when I was a kid, and I had to go to speech therapy. And then I actually had some malformations in my face and with my position of my jaws. I know that sounds really silly. So I had a huge surgery when I was 17 years
No
old,
way. Okay.
and I was told by now my profession is public speaking. I'm like, how does that? So there's some things in the midst of that kind of just become the redemptive story
God
of
has literally
yeah.
been molding you.
Yeah, like literally, like all the things that you are terrible at are the things that God's like, yeah,
I'm gonna use
you're
that.
you're my person, which is kind of why I love the story of like Gideon, or some of the stories of these other people, these unsuspecting people that say it would never be me. I mean, Peter is not. He's not killing it. And God's like, you're the guy that's going to start the church, so that nobody's going to be confused that it's you. So I feel a lot of that sometimes. People are very kind and very nice, And I say this not as a false anything. I've always kind of said about myself that I was the captain of the B team. Like everybody's always like, "Oh, you're a 5 talent person." I said, "No, no, I'm actually very blessed to know that I'm a 2 talent person, but I'm going to try to use those 2 talents as best as I possibly can." And I do believe in time God honors us by adding more to that. So there's some people I would tell you I know some people that are 5 talent people in ministry, and it's funny thing about it is that most of them are not in ministry anymore because they learned to ride talent. So I was just dumb enough to know that I had to work really hard just to get there. And that was a good discipline that sort of made its way into my life, that regardless of this is going to be there.
I'm not going to speak on behalf of anybody else watching this, but I know that I found my lesson for today.
Yeah, I
Billy,
mean,
your 1.5 talent is
yeah, right.
ride it.
Yeah, don't. I think sometimes we look at ourselves critically in light of others, especially in a world of internet. Like, I mean, I came up through preaching. I didn't watch podcasts. We didn't have podcasts. Didn't have access to all these things. I had to read books or talk to people. But I had some incredible professors. So David Kinnaman wrote a book years ago called "You Lost Me," and it was a very powerful book about mentoring and about how every young person needs 5 people that are not their parents. If they have 5 people that pour into them that are not their parents, then when they leave college, they have like over 70% uh, um, likelihood that they will stay in faith. And if they don't, it's like the number is completely reversed. So I had some professors, some people that really I watched passionately follow Jesus just as faith mentors. I had a couple in South Africa. When I moved to the US, I had some professors that were training you in one side, but also forming you on the other, and giving you kind of some wise counsel. And then in ministry, this is why I always seek to be a part of a team or be friends with people that are outside of my context, that I can say, "Oh, I had an issue with a staff person." They don't know who the staff person is, but so there's some significant people. There's a couple that have passed on, which is always sad, but I can still hear their voice kind of ringing in my ears. So I'm constantly trying to find newer people to be in relationship with. Yeah, so there are definitely some significant. I wouldn't be where I'm at without. So it's not just hard work. It's some of the people that took time to pour into me.
It makes me not want to ask the question, what would you do if you weren't in ministry?
I'd be a chef for sure.
Yes.
Hmm. I would. I love cooking. In high school, we had. So in high school, when I started high school, so high school is 5 years in South Africa. It's 8th through 12th grade, so it's 5-year high school. And then you kind of get prepped for that. Well, the draft in South Africa was still in effect when I was up till I was about in 10th grade. And so after that, there were some other alternate programs, and one of them, my mom is an incredibly good cook. My grandmother was a wonderful baker, and so I was always with my mom in the kitchen, and we would do a lot of stuff together, even more than my sisters did. So I had a passion for it, and it's creation, which I think speaks to me, as well as something that is it's transformation, which is if I was going to choose any word about my life, my ministry, my philosophies, it'll always have the word transformation, because that was kind of my personal journey story, as well as what I try to bring to the table. And cooking does that. And I don't mind if people yell at me and throw stuff at me, because it happens all the time. So I might as well be in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, not to throw your age out there or anything, you've had several years leading ministries, being in ministries, just serving the kingdom before you landed here in Northeast Ohio. What are maybe 1 or 2 moments that either were highlight moments where you realize, like, God has done this in my journey of ministry that is unforgettable? And what is maybe one challenge that you've gone through that you kind of hold on to, that you say, hey, this was extremely challenging, but this kind of shaped who I am as a pastor?
Yeah. I'll answer that kind of in a couple ways, or maybe just a few ways. Sometimes ministry is not what you think it's going to be. And I think people have a misconception. Anybody, I don't want to say anybody, but many people can preach sermons. There's a difference between preaching a sermon and leading a church. They're not the same thing, even though they kind of appear the same in a moment. Had some, when you learn, the first time you get kind of really hurt in church, which happens unfortunately to every person, most people, should I say. But when you kind of get behind the veil and you realize it's not quite what it was, I was at a church that was very sort of just do the same thing. It was a small church, 300 people. I pastored there for like 7 years. And even though I was in a lead role there, we had, 3 or 4 elders, and we were just going to do what we're going to do. And most of my job was preaching. And I remember when I really was at a point that I was like, I think church is about not just about coming and singing and leaving. And a group of us went and we said, hey, these are some of the things we want to do. And one of the elders, or the elders group, kind of said, we just want you to preach. Like, if you could just preach, that'd be great. And I was like, yeah, I did. So you have that, and they're not bad people. Yeah. But then it was like, I need to move. I moved to a very large church of about 3,500. I was in an associate role. But they'd made some bad hires. They'd gone through a pastor with a moral failing, and so the church was in disarray, and that happens sometimes. And then the leader that they brought in, it was rough, and so there was just an ugliness behind the scene. But that was tough. I wasn't there very long. I got recruited. I continued studying. I had some other opportunities. One of the most profound thing that I've ever experienced in ministry, in regard to my call and my job, happened in the last year, which we can talk about at maybe a later date. But the other one was, I was part of a church plant. I was recruited to be a part of a church plant, and it was a church that we went from 60 to 600 people in about 3 years. Grew in staff and everything else. And then there became kind of a power struggle, which often happens in churches because it's people. Yeah. And the leadership just wanted to grow at all costs. And I was like, I want to do some spiritual formation. Yeah. And they were like, no, we want to be a secret church only. Mm-hmm. And I kind of dug my heels a bit and said, guys, this stuff matters. So then I had to go. So I was very unceremoniously fired. It was a very shady firing. And I left, and there was another group of people in the same town on the other side that said, hey, we want to do something. Some of the people that I'd pastored there, so we planted a church. Yeah. And it was very successful. And then we had another church approach us that said, hey, we're dying. Mm-hmm. We got some facilities. Can we do a merger? Which we did. And that was the church I was at before I came here for about 10 years, which was awesome. And it was great to see people come together and do something new. Sadly, the church that I got fired from, they hired another guy who, after about 18 months, and I was in a pastor's group with him, which was awesome. And then he kind of went to the elders and said the same thing, so they got rid of him. And then they hired one more guy who I also knew, and then he was there for a little bit, and then they fired him and closed the church.
The vineyard owners?
Yeah, it's terrible. And it was actually really sad because it was a church that we were in our community in a way that was amazing. And there was something beautiful and special about that. The large multi-site church that it wasn't a multi-site church, it was a mega church. The one that I was at kind of prior to all these things, they went down from 3,300 people to 400 or 500 people, and they ended up getting assimilated into another church, and they no longer exist either. It's very sad because there's a very ugly side to church as well, can be, and it's hard on pastors and families and other things.
So you've seen a lot of the journey and stories of multiple, I was going to say flocks. I always say that. I always tell you what I was going to say. As if nobody's going to know anyway.
We can edit that in.
No, but you've seen a lot of the history of a handful of churches, and I want to kind of wrap up with this a little bit because I have grown up in faith here. I started going here when I was in like 7th, 8th grade, more seriously when I was getting into high school. And I didn't plan on coming back and being on staff here, but it's just God opened doors that I didn't ask him to open, and that's just kind of been part of my story. But there's a lot of people that are sitting in my shoes. There's a lot of people who have been established here. We're a very long established church. And so a lot of people have seen a lot of highlights, a lot of challenges here at Greenford. I know that you haven't been here as long as some people. But for everybody watching, I'm just wondering what what is something about Greenford's future, of GCC's future, that you are just really excited about?
I think what I love, so we've been here, almost 3 years now. I think what I love about Greenford is the authenticity of it. I don't want to be at a church that's just about the performance or about something. I want to do life with people. I want to do it with people that are real. I've shared. I think I've shared this I'm like, if you're looking for a celebrity pastor, you need to keep looking, because I want to do life with people. So if you're looking for the flashiest, the next best thing, I love the way that Greenford's almost 200 years old. It's like 195 years old.
Mhm.
So I also understand that there is a huge place for us to actually reinvent ourselves and decide who do we want to be, and how is that actually going to be relevant. I think it's a place that people want to be developed. I think people are hungry, not just for what's your church doing that's cool, and maybe we should do that. It's people that actually genuinely want to be in relationship with others. We've felt very welcomed by people here, and I think there's a lot of churches that are doing things that programmatically are amazing, but they're lacking a soul. And Greenford has a beautiful soul, and that was something that really drew us to this place. You guys also have trees, which in Texas we didn't have those, so that was the other part. But no, there's something special about Greenford, and it's one of those things. It's an intangible. It's not one that we can go, oh, we have an LED screen, or our worship's amazing, or we got the best drummer in town. There's something special about the people and our staff in this place, and that's what really makes me want to fight for it and be a part of it and develop it. And we're not about egos. Recently, I'll kind of close maybe with this, but and we can talk more about the last year, maybe, if you'd like. But the reality is that the Sunday that I was commissioned by the elders was a time when me and my family came up there, and the elders asked me some questions. It's almost like a marriage ceremony. It's like, hey, do you promise, and do you? It's like you're taking vows. And that's not something in our tradition that, we don't have scripts for, oh, when somebody comes, this is what we do. But I love that they did that. And then the elders came to me and they were like, we're going to ask you to kneel, and we're going to anoint you with oil, and we're going to ask you to take these vows. And
Very covenantal.
very
Yeah.
covenantal, right? Which I was like, absolutely. And I think they were like, okay, you're not
I was
thinking
shocked
this
by
is weird.
I was shocked by your excitement. You were like, yeah, very
Yes, absolutely. We wanted to do
yes,
that.
it was.
Yeah, but I think it's where it is. And one thing that I said was, I think the best place for a leader to start with this church is on their knees, because that's a reminder of my place and my what I've been called to here. I'm not called to be the guy on the platform. I'm called to be the servant of all. That's what Jesus kind of told everybody. And so we did that time. That was a very, very meaningful thing to me, and I think it was good because it's kind of outside of what we do on a regular Sunday. And then after that, one of the comments that I made, which I truly believe, is Jesus is the leader of our church, not me. Yes, I have a little title that says lead, but let's not kid ourselves. I'm not going to be here for 195 years. Jesus will be. I won't. And that's a good thing. But the other thing is this: is being a lead pastor, is that a title or is that a role? And I think that sometimes we see it as an achievement of, this comes back to why I don't use a podium and some of the other things as well. If me being a lead pastor is, hey, I have the CEO job of Greenford, which is sometimes the way it's portrayed, I think is a mistake, because it's not about what title we hold. Like, oh, you used to be an associate, and then you used to be a youth pastor, and then you used to be, now you're the lead. So now you've, finally, and one day,
climbing that
one
ladder.
day you'll be the senior and the founding, or whatever it is. Being a lead pastor is not about being the top dog. It's about being leading people from the front, meaning my job is to take people to my job is to shepherd people to Jesus. So all that means is, if the gate's here and Jesus is over there, I might be standing closer to the gate and pulling people. It's a role. It's not my title. It's my job. It's my calling. That's why I think titles matter, not from the look at what I've accomplished, but this is what God's calling in my life is, and this is what I'm ultimately going to give my life to.
Yeah.
and that's I get to do that at Greenford. That's why if some of these other great churches called me, I'd be like, I'm not looking for a title. I'm looking for a place that I can be who God's called me to be, not sit in an office that somebody's gifted me.
Right.
So yeah.
Do we have? I don't know all what you wanted to talk about just in the journey of like the last year. We've been a church in transition for a long time, and I know some people are new to that in our church. Some people have been here since the last time we transitioned between major roles like a lead pastor or even like worship pastors. But
My path to come, the season that I was in, I think a lot of people know, the season that I was in during the COVID years, we'd always kind of lived in Texas, lived closer to Haley's family because my family's far away. During COVID, you guys know, tragically, she lost her mom and her dad and two grandparents and other things. So our attachment to that area and our kids having, grandparents sort of changed. And it led us into this season of, okay, is this where we need to be? We had a beautiful house. Both of us had great jobs. I know it's hard to believe, but I was well liked in my job, and it wasn't dumpster fire yet. But we kind of sat down and we said, or do we want to phone it in? Is that why we trained the way we did? Is that why we did? Do we just want to be like, hey, we could live out 20 years like it's nothing? And we kind of came to a point that we just said, we feel that God's calling us to go. And so we kind of cast a wide net. We didn't want to move to, California or the Northwest, but outside of that, we were like, hey, we want to live sort of on the eastern side of the U.S. if we had any say, and maybe even more in the Northeast. Neither one of us, I mean, I'd lived in Michigan a little bit.
pretty close to here.
Pretty close to here, but probably about 3-4 hours. Right in the middle of the hand or whatever we say.
Very similar climate, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, kind of similar to that. And we moved, and it was tough. We moved in the middle of a year. We moved in January, so our kids were halfway in school. Our kids were, let's see, they would have been like 9, 8, and 12 at the time, or 9 and 12, or somewhere there. It was a hard move because we were still grieving. And then we kind of changed things, but all these were the long-term positives. I actually had about 3 different offers for lead roles, and then one of the recruiters that I talked to, he said, "Hey, there's this opportunity in this church called Greenford in Youngstown." Okay, we know nothing. I mean,
Some people in Youngstown don't know where Greenford's
yeah,
at.
right.
Until you reference White House Fruit Farms.
Oh, I know exactly where that is. Yeah. And I always say we own that, which we don't. We don't. But anyway, we kind of made the move up here, and it was the job of one of my passions is preaching. We'd kind of gone through a tough season. Any pastor that you talk to, leading through COVID was a very tough season for pastors. It really tested a lot of people, left ministry as a result of that. And it was kind of a time of being sort of called, okay, I could do it here, but is that the best? Is it time? And we talked about what it would look like if you leave a church when it's healthy and intentionally, instead of leaving a church when things are bad. So we moved up here middle of the year.
Most people in ministry don't do that.
No.
Let alone people that are people that are in non-ministerial careers.
Yeah.
To kind of uproot literally and move across the country. And
well, there's very few people even in your church that will come to you and go, we just feel like we've been developed and we're in such a healthy place here, and so we're leaving Greenford to go. And nobody does that. Everybody waits until, we don't like a decision or something happened, and there's a change. Oh, now we're going to leave. So it was very much a difference thing, and that's part of what I was seeking when I came here. I got to open Boardman campus about 14 months after being here. So part of the role was that there was always going to be a preaching role, but it was also going to be to lead people. And that's my passion more than anything else. I'm a relational leader. So most lead pastors are introverts, which a lot of people don't realize. And I had a professor a long time ago that said, you're kind of a unicorn because you're an extroverted lead pastor, which is very rare. And so it probably is part of why my leadership style and difference is more noticeable, because it's just kind of the path of it. Well, after we went through some transition here, there was kind of this, let's just call it this dead space for, okay, how are we going to transition and what are we going to do? And so I'm just going to be really transparent about it and kind of share that journey. So the leadership kind of told our staff and said, hey, we're taking applications. And just because of my training and my study, I'd served as a lead pastor about 15 years. I was like praying about it. I just started Boardman. I'm like, okay, like how's this all going to work?
Yeah.
I felt that that God sort of called me in a way that was, hey, is it better for me to lead a campus or is it better for me to lead the church? And that wasn't an easy decision because I knew that if I chose this, I'd have to give up Boardman. Yeah. And I love Boardman. I love the people at Boardman. I have deep relationships with people there as well. And so it wasn't just like, oh yeah, it's not about the title, it's about the role. Went through a process with the elders and kind of they were trying to catch up and decide. I mean, they hadn't hired a pastor in 15 years. Yeah. They hadn't been through that process, and it's not something that we sit in meetings and go, okay, so when we replace your job, what should we do?
And there's a large percentage of people that were around between
correct
Jeff Hughes and Sean Kelly, and
yeah,
a lot of people in that season of frustration. That's one of the things that I told people was I was around when we did that transition, and it was difficult. Like this is something that's not going to be easy for our church, but it's something that change will grow the church.
Yeah, and then you loss of staff people rarely comes in ones.
Yeah,
It's usually twos, or it's usually threes or sevens or something like that. Yeah. So you find yourself in a time of transition, and you're trying to bolster your staff. You're trying to bring people in. It's a very complicated time, and people love transition. They love it when things are chaotic. Yeah. They only have positive, encouraging things to say.
Right.
No, but people feel a sense. People don't fear change; they fear loss. Mm-hmm. And so when they feel like something is being lost, we react to that because we love our church, and we care about these things. So I went through kind of a process with our elders, and I think that there were some things there that just were not amazing. A lot of people were like, now that we are where we are, people said, oh, this should have happened a year ago. And my first comment is, actually, it shouldn't have. Yeah. Because there were some things that needed to kind of come out and needed to sort of be resolved before we could step forward healthily. If we just paved over some of that stuff, it probably wouldn't have been healthy. So I am going to share something that maybe a lot of people don't know, and I'm going to just be very open and transparent about it because this is, like I said, this is ending in a good place and a positive place. But I wrote a vision plan for our elders that they asked me to do, which I was like, I think that's what we should do, and we talked through things. I think there was a good connection point of how this is going to work. Yeah. Well, it kind of got down to me and another candidate from which I got to meet and hang out with and everything else. And the elders actually got to a point that they were trying to decide, because making hires from within is a mixed bag. Yeah. Making hires from without is a mixed bag. Yeah. From within, you have somebody who understands the culture. From without, you have fresh perspectives. And you can't fault people for they should have pursued both of those things. I think that they got to a point with the candidate that they were very like, this is the guy. This is the guy that we want. And so they met with me very kindly, and they said, hey, we're going to move forward with him. And he came on a visit, I got to meet him, and I think he and I would have worked great together. And it was in the midst of that process, because whenever there's a transition, you think about your place. Am I supposed to be here? Was this just a placeholder to get me out of where I was, and now the next thing, or whatever it is? And it was kind of one of those things, because in the midst of that, what was happening for me personally was kind of the story of Abraham and Isaac. That the call of ministry needs to be refreshed from time to time. Yeah. And God kind of confronted me with, are you going to only be obedient if I give you everything you want, or are you going to be obedient because I've called you? And I wrestled with that for a long time in ministry, because once you're in ministry, you don't really think about those things as much. And we should. And I was really at the point...
You preached that sermon in the middle of the season,
I did preach that sermon. That basically was, no, God, I'm going to be faithful because you've called me to it, not just because I'm getting everything that I want in the way that I think it should happen. Well, what happened was, in the midst of all this process, so I was resolved. I was like, no, okay, God, I'm going to be faithful, and you've given me a spot, and you've given me a place. And our elders were very like, no, you have a place and a spot, and we met, and I was 100% like, right. Okay, I'm fine with this. This is great. And then about a month after that, the elders kind of came and communicated and said, yeah, this guy's, he's just, for whatever purpose, he's not going to be a part of this. And I think it caught them off guard. It definitely caught me off guard. That I was like, okay, what do we do? And then it's kind of like you're everything's in place. It's like you've packed the whole car up, and then you realize your keys are right in the back under, so you got to unload everything out of the car. So it was kind of an interesting time, but
I feel like you know how my day starts
yeah,
every single day.
Where are my keys? Oh, they're right at the bottom. And what that did was, in my opinion, what it did was it created a level of honesty between me and the elders that maybe we wouldn't have got to otherwise. And we talked about some very real things. Yeah. And not everything that we talked about was awesome and amazing on both sides. And we just kind of acknowledged that and were honest about that. But I also knew that there was kind of a timeline for me personally about, hey, I have to make it, I either need to be, God has called me to lead. So it was kind of after that God sort of said, no, Sheldon, you've been faithful to this. Yeah. And you need to be leading. And I shared this with the elders. I went to them and I said, look, guys, this is where I'm at. And if I'm not going to be called to lead here, then I need to go somewhere and lead. Yeah. And we kind of agreed to, I shared some, what I felt was appropriate timelines. And there was a bit of back and forth with our elders because they were being confronted by some of those things. They never actually told me this, but I'm assuming some things. But I think that they spent some time fasting and praying, and they came back to me and very openly said, we believe this is God's call. And I'd never seen that in church, because if I never want to be a person that tries to give ultimatums or do any of those things. But they came back and they said, we believe this is where God's calling us, and we're committed to that. Okay. And that's what I loved about even the covenantal moment of commissioning, because it's not because it's all rainbows and unicorns and we're just excited. We are committing to do some things that are big things and give each other trust, and really try to rebuild. I think even our leadership would say there were some things that we kind of got, I don't want to say lazy on, but they just kind of, when everything's going fine, I say it in marriage class, nobody means to get lazy in their marriage, they just do. And I think that had kind of come there. And so there was this kind of revisioning process of, what does it mean for us to be, who is God calling Greenford to be, and what's the next step for us? How can we be effective? Do we just want to be a big church and go, oh, we're big, and in 5 years if we lose 100 people and then we lose 100 more, we're not going to really notice that? Or do we actually want to be a church on mission and engaged in how we move forward? And so the elders and I, we started at a very covenantal point. That's my thing. And I love that about our story, is because any one of us in the room would never have written the ending the way that it happened, which tells me that it's not about us and it wasn't from us. And we all had to kind of align with where God was. Yeah. And we had to be submissive to each other and covenantal with each other. And I just want to tell even our people, or people that are watching this, that rarely happens in church. Most of the time it goes the other way. People, no, we're going to do something different, and the church ends up, and I've seen it so many times. And this was not only a moment of kind of recalling in my own life, but I think it's a moment where we've set some foundational blocks that is going to push us in a place that we don't even know yet. And so God takes it down to 300 people that are lapping up water by the river and says, hey, now you'll go and defeat the enemy. You thought you would do that when you had 32,000? That's not where it's at. When you get to the place where you are fully trusting in God and giving each other the benefit of the doubt and trusting each other, and you're driving each other, that's where God does it from. He did it with 12 people on Pentecost. He's never used the big crowds. He's always used the village idiots. So I am in the right spot, in the right place, if nothing else.
I've never been more proud to be a village idiot.
I've never been more proud to be a village idiot. And so I think some of it, even if we're using language of even the talents, which we're preaching this coming week, there were some things that got buried. And I think our elders have had the courage to say, we're going to dig those up and we're going to start using them. And I love that. I love messy church. I love that we're not perfect. I love that we're going to make a ton of mistakes, and because Jesus is the leader and he'll take us where we need to go. And if we're just faithful and answer the call and do what's right, God's going to do things that we cannot do.
Yeah.
So I love that. It's kind of a swan song, and my desire would be to be at Greenford. I mean, I'll be 49 soon. I would love to be at Greenford till I retire. Um, I'm crazy enough that that's probably unlikely. I would love that.
I was just going to tell
I would
everybody
love
to
to do
flood
that.
the comments with how old do you think Sheldon is?
65. Actually, I should have been like, I'm only 27. Ministry years are tough
Yeah,
years.
it's done something to you.
Yeah, but no, I love that about the story, because I don't want to be a guy that moves from church to church. I think I want to be a guy that has deep roots and really wants to be a part of something. And it's gonna take time, and it's gonna take effort, and it's gonna take grace and forgiveness and all the things that we need from God. We're gonna have to do for each other, and
Well, that's where
then God will do the great
discipleship
things.
and formation
That's
comes
right.
from. It comes from deep roots. It comes from relationships. There's a lot of things in the church world that we can track, that we can measure. The church, it's always been extremely difficult to measure transformation on like a spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest ways that you can measure it is through stories.
Yeah.
And you don't get people's stories unless you have the relationship. And that's part of the reason for this little side table thing, is to kind of see some people's stories and see like what is God doing that is um, not under the table, but like after the fact.
Well, at the table, Jesus is always eating with tax collectors and sinners.
Yeah.
He's doing a lot of stuff at the table.
Inviting himself to tables and being invited to other tables.
Well, he's not doing it at the altar. He's doing it at the table. And that's the shift that happens you only meet God at the altar. And Jesus says, no, you meet him at the table. Yeah. And that's what's transformative. You meet him on the road. I mean, you meet him in the midst of life. And I think that's something that...
You see the tables at the temple, but I mean...
but they're not relational. They're transactional tables.
Transactional,
yeah.
You know?
So no, it's I will say that there is something very special about Greenford, and it's special because it's hard, and it's special because it's complicated. It's not special because we have some exceptional worship person that's just the next big thing. It's the people. That's what makes our church exceptional.
And I really hope and pray, well, not even hope and pray, I know that this is going to be encouraging from everybody who's watching, listening, because the whole goal of this is to make everybody feel like they're sitting down with the person in the other chair, right. and they're hearing this story from you. Thank you for your transparency, for your vulnerability. It's inspiring hearing how God has threaded a lot of things that he's done in your life to the point of, Northeast Ohio from Cape Town.
Yeah.
But I think for people to hear that, I think that it should be an encouragement to them, not just about how God's worked in your life, but how God's working in the life of this church. And I think people can take heart and have some hope that there's some people in this season of transition that have taken it. It's been very difficult.
Right.
I know for some of us on staff, this has been a really difficult season. I've been through a lot of these transitions on staff. I've only been here for 11 years. And it's what I've told everybody is like, transitions are really difficult, but transitions from my perspective have always been worth it. And I don't even think that I'm reaching a whole lot to say that some people in our congregation that have been either members or serving here, or who have attended here for a long time, that have been here through another transition, they know that too, that through a transition, God is still at work. He's still doing something. And sometimes you have to go through that change in order to see growth. But yeah, thank you for joining me at Side Table Talk. And I'm really excited for the future of GCC, and I hope everybody watching and listening is too. So,
yeah.
Sheldon, thank you.
Thank you.